business has grown substantially with an annual revenue now in the tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Left school early.
It just creates a culture of people that are just painting between the lines too much.
And then bang, you sort of at 19, this is sort of hitting you.
Like we're just constantly failing forward.
It sounds to me like you're saying failure is quite positive.
Failure scares the shit out of me as well, as much as the next person.
Thank you, Andrew, for coming along. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invite.
No worries.
Really appreciate it.
You and I have known each other, what, maybe 5 years or so?
Yeah. Just through the building and
through the building,
through the lift,
through the lift where we lived together for a while there, and in the same building in Grey Lynn. So the reason why I'm doing this is it's just interestingly enough, I've just created this podcast series called Capturing Energy, and I just thought, it might be an idea just to talk to some people with energy. And, then all of a sudden you start to write a list, and I wrote a list of people at work, and then, that Andrew in the I've seen him in the lift a couple of times. I've seen you at some awards nights.
That was at that, what I think was the Westpac Business Awards.
That's right.
I don't think it's Westpac anymore.
And did you might have won a prize?
We won People's Choice, I think.
So, I thought, why not? And then, of course, we caught up recently over a real estate matter, and I thought, okay, this is good. Why don't we do this? I appreciate it. Andrew Laloli is a major shareholder, director, and group CEO of BePure. That's B-E capital P-U-R-E.
Yeah, correct.
BePure, a group of health and wellness businesses providing market-leading scientific wellness education and health supplements with a mission to transform lives. That's you guys.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big industry. The brands include BePure Wellness, an industry-leading premium supplement range with a mission to restore essential energy, and Eve Wellness, a fast-growing women's supplement brand with the mission to ease the shame around taboos such as periods, sex, hormones, and mental health.
Yes.
It's basically the two parts.
Yeah.
Andrew invested in the business when it was a small, around $700,000 per year in revenue business, and relaunched it as CEO in July 2015.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this is since then the business has grown substantially to be an industry leader in New Zealand with an annual revenue now in the tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you live in Auckland, nearby myself, with Beatrice, your wife, and your 3-month-old daughter, Rosa. Just give you something else to do.
Yeah. Well, she's definitely the best part of my day these days. It's so amazing.
Well, it's just awesome. And we were talking on the car on the way here. I've done 1 or 2 of these podcasts, and I've got other ones lined up. And normally you're talking to someone at the other side of their business. They've sort of they've been going for decades potentially. But what's really cool about talking to you is, as you said, you're in the trenches right now. You're actually in it. So you're a Kiwi.
Yeah.
Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in, was born National Women's Hospital, but originally in sort of New Windsor, went to school to New Windsor Primary for a year, and then Mum and Dad moved out to Titirangi, and then so I sort of finished up my sort of schooling days in that part of Auckland.
So you're a Westie?
Yeah, so I'm a Westie. Having said that though, when I left school, I didn't have the best time at school. And so when I left school, I kind of sort of moved very much away from that whole identity and sort of looked to create a sort of a whole new sort of reinvent myself and create a new identity outside of West Auckland and school.
What sort of age are you talking there?
So I left school at the end of what was called sixth form at the time, and with very little education. Like I was sort of teased about being dumb when I was probably 7. I sort of very, very distinctly remember this one occasion about being sort of pretty heavily teased by a couple of friends, actually, ironically. And when I was 7, and I kind of, from then on, I kind of just shut down at school. And so instead of like, I suppose my way of finding safety was through avoidance, And
so this is 7. You're primary school.
Yeah. So is
that New Windsor or Titirangi?
So that was when I was at Titirangi. I think that transition from New Windsor to Titirangi was quite tough for me.
Right.
And at that age, and that is actually something that I sort of chat to my wife about, like, we can move around before sort of like Rosa sort of starts going to school, but I think at that point it's probably important that we sort of commit to living in sort of one area so that she's not having to move around schools or sort of change friends, based on my own sort of, I suppose, personal experience with that and potentially some of the impact that had. But yeah, so essentially I supposedly, well, I didn't supposedly, I definitely just shut down at school
Really?
and it was very much a matter of survival and mainly trying to avoid shame. And then I sort of got out of school and basically tried to reinvent myself, I suppose.
It's funny. I've known you, for a few years reasonably well, but that really surprises me. I did not know, and it's interesting how today, that's quite a surprise. Do you think that challenges like that have? Was there a point there at school where you thought, well, that was a challenge that you were going to overcome, or it made you more determined, or?
I didn't. I always knew that I wanted to do something, like I wanted to be really good at something, but I left school with, like I said, with an incredibly poor education and next to no confidence.
Did you finish school? You actually finished 1 year earlier?
So I didn't do 7th form.
Right.
So I did 6th form, passed a few subjects in 5th form, and then in 6th form I was playing competitive sport at the time. I was sort of a top golfer.
Okay.
And so that had sort of kind of overtaken my school and schooling, but it was actually the playing golf actually it gave me a platform to build my confidence outside of school, and so basically when I got the chance to kind of leave school, I was out of there and looking to create a new identity, and that was. And find something that I was really good at, and at the time golf was that. And
so 6th form, you've made the call to leave school.
Yeah, end of 6th form. Yeah,
were your parents up for that, or?
Yeah, I mean, mum and dad were. They never put. I don't remember them putting any pressure on me to do anything, to be honest. Like everything I've done I've been completely self-driven and self-motivated, and like with my golf that I sort of got, by the time I think I was sort of 17 or 18, I was on a +3 handicap, which is 3 below scratch, and that was starting when I was sort of 13, and that was, sheer just absolute dedication. Like I used to say, for my whole teenage years, I could count the amount of times I didn't play golf on one hand.
Wow.
So that was my absolute dedication, and that was sort of an area that I started kind of building some confidence in, because at school I basically zero confidence and very much just wanted to, I suppose, survive it.
What got you into golf? Was it a school thing, or?
No, it was actually Dad played golf at Titirangi Golf Club,
Right.
and so I got into it with him. Like I was always into sport growing up. Like I played soccer and cricket and a little bit of rugby at school, but mainly soccer and cricket. And I think it was one winter. It was soccer had been rained out pretty much most weeks, and Dad said, "Why don't you come down and play golf?" And so I did, and then you might have heard people describe getting the golf bug. It can be a pretty addictive game, and so I got the golf bug pretty quickly, and then by the time I was 15, I was playing for Auckland, and then by the time I was, I think, 17, I was playing for the Auckland men's team.
Wow. So you're leaving school, you've got golf, thank goodness, I guess, by the sounds. And
yeah.
And then did you get a part-time job or?
Yeah. So I did for a few months. After first leaving school, that was kind of the deal, that I had to get a job. So I suppose I'm not sure if that was the deal that I made with myself, or probably Mum for that matter. So I did that for about 6 months.
What was that?
So I was just working as a labourer at Titirangi Golf Club.
Okay, cool.
As with the greenkeepers, they were renovating the golf course at the time, and so they just had me digging trenches essentially. And I can remember an older guy working with me, and he used to say to me, "You know, you don't have to work that hard." And I didn't listen to him. I was sort of pretty committed to doing the best that I could.
So there's some telltale signs there. So 6 months, and then
I, because I was traveling around playing tournaments. I think we used to call ourselves at the time. I wasn't a professional, but that was sort of that was the ambition. We used to sort of, I think, refer to it as like being a professional amateur. I kind of stopped working and did that, and I was had some support by the golf club and
Right.
some businessmen at the golf club, and everyone, like, it was a very, very supportive environment, and then I just basically I lived a pretty low cost life, so because Mum and Dad didn't have any money either, so it wasn't like they did the best they could, but I had to sort of figure out how to support myself, and I suppose this is where some of the entrepreneurial nature starts sort of.
So you're fending for
seeding.
yourself in your teens, sort of thing.
Fending for myself, and but then also being at the golf club and some of these businessmen that were sort of helping me out. I was sort of looking at them and thinking, I wonder how they got their money, and I'm playing golf with all of these older guys that owned businesses, and so I suppose it was you're a product of your environment. I believe in the absolute sense of the word, and I suppose just being in that environment sort of elevates the way that you're thinking or your reality, and the longer you spend in that environment, the more normal that gets. And when that feels normal, it doesn't feel so unattainable. So I kept playing competitive golf until I was about 19, and then I'd sort of kind of peaked when I was 18, and then when I was 19, just had a bit of a form slump, and then started like suffering quite strong anxiety, and off the back of that form slump and not knowing how to sort of emotionally process that, and certainly not having, back in those days, that was sort of around 2001, 2002, it's still like, mental health stuff didn't really feel like it was something that, didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. And
so there's a challenge at quite a young age. So you've left school early, and you've only a year early, and you've got a focus, which is great. You've got some momentum. You're scoring some points.
Yeah.
And then bang, you sort of at 19, this is sort of hitting you.
And then I'm like freaking out because all my eggs are in this one basket.
Right.
And from a being a professional golfer was my thing, and that's probably something that's been a bit of a pattern right through my life, that I put lots of pressure on myself, and I think project my high expectations for myself onto others in the sense of how they perceive that I should be. So I sort of again, it's sort of the I suppose the pressure that I put on myself, and I probably sort of had probably some technical issues that were going wrong with my golf, but just being a bit freaked out by it and not knowing how to sort of deal with it, so that was sort of my golf career ending, basically.
At 19?
At sort of 19, 20. Yeah, 19, 20.
You're living at home?
I was living at home, yeah. And living at home with mum and dad, and I think I might have been paying $50 a week board at that point. So
how did you get over that hump? What happened there? Was it?
And so that was really tough, because that was like I feel like I went from the identity shift was really, really hard. Like I went from feeling like I was someone and then you basically no one with nothing, and people start asking, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like,
well, your peers are probably doing courses. They're at
uni,
yep.
and everyone's like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, nothing. And I was sort of saying to you, I think it was about that sort of 1920 that I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
And fortunately, I remember it being quite an easy read, which was sort of helpful for me. So I think the combination between that and the influence of businessmen that I played sort of golf with and was sort of influenced by, that were supporting me on my sort of golf journey.
Yeah.
Sort of, and just feeling like I was probably pretty unemployable. Like that was the thought that I had, that I'm sort of pretty unemployable. So it sort of it took me sort of a few years to, maybe a year or so. Felt like a long time at the time, but it was probably from when I sort of stopped playing golf to when I sort of set up my first business was probably a year and a half.
So you're 20, 21-ish?
So I was sort of 21-ish, and I set up a maintenance business, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, what was the attraction to a maintenance business?
It was just, it seemed like it was because what I wanted to do was get into property.
But why? Why did you want to get
Robert Kiyosaki?
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, so I read the book and I'm like, this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
And you got to remember that, like, I heard somebody describe the New Zealand economy as a property market with an economy attached to it. So you like every sort of guy that was sort of supporting me from Titirangi was had made their money in property, you know, and so it was.
Yeah, that was sort of reinforced.
Yeah, it was very reinforced. And then reading that book, I was like, "Oh, this is I want to. I'll go down this path because those guys just play golf all the time." So
at 21, you're thinking, "I want to eventually own property or do business in property."
Yeah, own property.
Right. Okay.
And so I set up my maintenance business, and the reason why I sort of went with that is it was something like I'd seen my dad do. He was a one-man band tradesman.
So he was in business for himself, right?
He was in business for himself,
right.
and so I'd sort of seen that, and I was like, and I'd kind of worked for him in the school holidays and that sort of thing, and done a little bit of work for him to sort of help fund my way through golf and things like that, and so this sort of seemed like the logical thing, and there was low capital to set up. Essentially, you'd go out, get a contract, and then hire contractors, and essentially you're exchanging other people's hours for dollars. So taking a margin out of the middle. So it seemed logical to me that was an easy way for me to make money.
Just on that though, you've talked about your dad was a one-man band. You're 21. You've never owned a business before, and all of a sudden you're contracting other people to work for you. Yeah.
So I always, whenever I went and worked for Dad, I kept saying to him, like, why don't you employ people to do this? Like, why are you doing it? And his answer was, oh, your mother wouldn't let me, that reply used to infuriate me, because whatever I was doing, I had sort of bold ambitions for it, other than school. Like, for some reason, I just mentally shut down there. But golf, and then in business, it wasn't. I didn't want to just sort of bunt it along. It was.
So you've started up. I guess you've got a lawnmower, or you've got some sort of equipment.
No. So it was essentially hiring contractors that had all of their own all of their own stuff.
So you didn't even have to own the equipment.
No, not really.
So how did you go out and get a contractor at 21 with like?
Just again through people I knew. So I'd built up relationships with people at the golf club that had property and had or knew somebody, and so I just I suppose I've done this right through my business career, where you do one deal here, and then you leverage that to get the next one, and leverage that to get the next one, and so I essentially just did that, and I managed to get into retirement villages, and we'd do a lot of return sort of maintenance, mainly painting and that sort of thing for retirement villages.
So I'm just trying to picture it. So you're 21. I'm guessing that the people that you are contracting are possibly a lot older.
Way older than me.
And experienced. And you're maybe going up to them in the golf club and saying, hey, look, I've got some work at a retirement village or something. Would you like to do it? Is that the sort of conversation?
So the guys that were working for me weren't from the golf club. It was the contacts for getting the work was, and then basically I put an ad in the paper for tradesmen, but again, like, keeping in mind, like, I was so used to being around older people. And so, like, that's one thing I sort of look back on at 21. Like, I was constantly, like, I mean, I look at some of our staff at the moment that are 21, and I couldn't imagine them doing some of the things that I was doing. But and they absolutely could do it. But it was like employing people that were in their 50s. I was employing people that were in their 40s, 50s, and probably 60s. And I never thought anything of it. Like, and because I didn't think anything of it. And I'm sure they did, but I just didn't really care.
So I'm just thinking about, maybe there's some younger people that are listening to this right now, or watching this right now, and they're thinking, crikey, I couldn't do that. What would you say to those people?
I think we've our lives are so. There's so much nuance in how our lives are shaped, and sort of like the influences that we have in our lives, and everyone's got through the journey that somebody goes on. I think there's always some incredibly unique skills that sort of get spawned out of the petri dish that we sort of from our parents, and then through school and the people we meet and the sport or the whether you're a musician or whatever, sends everyone on sort of their own journey. And everyone's, I suppose the interesting thing and what we were talking about before is everyone's got a story, and everyone's stories and skills are sort of quite interesting and unique. And I suppose, I think with anything, just make the most of the opportunities that are in front of you, and keep leaning in. The reality is still now, I've been in business for over 20 years now, or 20 years, just over 20 years, giving away my age. I realise
you're
that.
younger than me. At 21, so what I'm hearing here is you work with your father. You're in a golf club with older people, and you're receptive. You're trying to learn from them. You're picking up skills, and you're learning from people. Maybe not at school, but you're actually you're learning from the people around you.
And yeah, absolutely. And it's like and some of those skills have served me well. It would have served me a lot better if I'd sort of been able to pay a bit more attention at school. But certainly it made some of these other things sort of stronger, which led me in this direction. But yeah, I suppose going back to your question, I think it's leaning in and just failing forward. Still today that I talk about that in our team at sort of BePure and Eve, that we're just constantly failing forward. It's just, people say this all the time, but it's you. I feel like people say you don't learn from your wins. I think your wins put wind in your sails and sort of give you momentum and give you confidence, but it's. So I think that's what you get from your wins, but from your failures you learn and you sort of critique and you craft your skill, sort of failing forward.
Can I? Sorry to interrupt you. So let's say when you have a failure, I mean that can really throw some people, and they go off course and they lose confidence. But so how do you respond? It sounds to me like you're saying failure is quite positive, or you.
I think there's. I'm human, and I like failure scares the shit out of me as well, as much as the next person. But I think we have sort of a really, in society we have a sort of really warped perception of when you're sort of at your edges and you're failing, you're expanding your edges, and so that's where you're learning. And so to sort of beat yourself up for that is sort of the absolute opposite of what we should be doing. But I think we beat ourselves up for failing, and then as individuals and as a society, I think we attack people for making mistakes, and it just creates a culture of people that are just painting between the lines too much, and I think we would benefit massively from having far more compassion around honest failure, but then at the same time, everything can get manipulated as well. So where people start taking advantage of that as well. So
in your, I don't want to go too far ahead here because there's so much here, but in your current business, you say you've got a lot of young people, and are you encouraging them to paint outside the lines? Are you encouraging them to try stuff and fail? Is that what you do there?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Can you give an example of?
I try and give a lot of autonomy,
right.
And so and try and give a lot of ownership, and so one of the questions is what do you think? And because if they come to me with a question around something, I sort of ask them what they think, or I might say something to them like, put a proposal to me forward to me that you think my reaction will be like that will freak me out. So like I want you to scare me with a proposal and or like put a marketing plan together the budget of it scares you'll be scared to pitch it to me and you because you think that it'll be something that'll freak me out.
Wow.
So I try and encourage that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And if
doesn't mean I'm always going to say yes though.
But yeah, and I guess that's a condition of the what you're saying, and then I guess they've got ownership, right? So they really throw everything into it. And if they fail, that's okay. Have any of your staff created or caused you to create a product?
Yeah, so many.
Really?
So many.
Yep.
Yeah. Very few of the good ideas come from me. Yeah, I mean, I might be being a bit harsh on myself there, but like, yeah, I mean, especially now, like, we're sort of jumping around a bit, but we operate under a really tight strategy and execution rhythm within the business, and although there's sort of like real discipline around that strategy and execution, there's real flexibility within that framework, and every year that we go on, we get better and better at sort of strategy and execution rhythms, and the outcome of that is you're just so obvious in the business, giving more and more ownership to people and giving them what I refer to as sort of a paddock to call their own, so that they can roam free up to the edges of
I like that analogy.
of their paddock, and making sure that you don't put two people in the same paddock. That is like literally when you give two people the same job, you may as well just sort of encourage people to fight with each other. So
I like that. That's a great analogy. If we let's just go back to 19, 20, 21, 22. You're in your early 20s. You're doing your maintenance business. How long did you do that for?
So 3 months after I started my maintenance business, I bought my first rental property, which was sort of pretty ridiculous. It was a 3-story house, and I split it into a 4-bedroom house up the top and then a 1-bedroom sort of self-contained unit down the bottom, and rented them separately, which was illegal. It wasn't consented, but
good old days.
Yeah, the good old.
And what's the business doing in that behind the scenes?
So I got off to quite a fast start. I think within the first 2 years, I owned 8 or 9 rental properties, just making money from the maintenance business, and I was running this thing off the smell of an oily rag, like and keeping in mind, like I had lived incredibly lean through my golf days, so like I look back at how much money I was making in the maintenance business, and it wasn't that much considering what I was getting out of it in terms of capital to keep reinvesting in properties, and
So you've got a business that basically, it sounds like the business itself was actually quite cheap to get into, because these people that you've got working for you have got their own stuff.
Yeah.
You're growing up. How many people did that get to before you?
It sort of it ended up morphing, and I suppose this is where it's because eventually I got to the GFC, which then sort of and I was doing property investment and sort of small scale kind of development stuff, and then so the property stuff got parked during the GFC because the sky started falling in.
Okay.
And so I started really pushing the maintenance business a bit harder at that point, and I also added on to it. I created a construction contracting business as well, which was this was the biggest mistake that I made, because the construction industry is incredibly uncivilized and really low margin, and especially during the GFC. But I'm starting to make decisions from a place of not enough and ego, as opposed to sort of what had got me to the point and the point that I was already sort of at. And
how old are you here?
So that would have been, I'd have been sort of probably mid-20s.
So you've been going for 5 years. You've made a bit of dough. You've bought some property. Things are going good.
Yeah.
And
bought myself an Audi.
Oh, nothing wrong with an Audi, mate. Come on.
which I never would have done. And again, because you start meeting, like, if you have some success, you start attracting different people.
Okay.
And I was sort of, I'd met sort of one guy in particular that comes to mind that I still do work with to this day, and he's like, I can't believe how how well you're doing, and he's sort of like
fed the ego a little bit.
It's sort of like I didn't really realise what I'd done, and he's and I was driving around in a really cheap car, and he's like, you need to get an Audi, and you need to, and so I think that sort of started leading me off on a probably
like the devil on your shoulder sort of thing.
Probably a bit of a weird path of where I sort of got a bit distracted, and I probably dealt with the stress of the GFC and the business, staff across all of the businesses the contractors, I was employing contractors, probably got at times, around 100,
wow.
and maybe over at times, and so dealing with that stress, I probably was definitely overusing alcohol to help deal with that.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow. And you're in your late 20s?
Yeah, mid to late 20s. So, the binge drinking culture is sort of alive and well in New Zealand. And again, you're a product of your environment, who you're surrounding yourself by. And so that really influenced me. It probably wasn't great for my business. GFC was pretty hard. Got to end of 2012, and business was actually had some really tough times. It was actually going pretty well at the end of 2012, and then between sort of early 2013 and mid 2013, my construction contracting business sort of got into like the perfect storm of contract disputes. I remember we were working on a multi-level reclad. The company that we were working for didn't pay us for 5 months, and I think I had like 30 people working on there.
The company didn't pass?
Didn't pay us.
Pay us, okay, got it. Yeah,
didn't pay us for like 4 months or something.
Wow.
And we were in a negotiation. I mean, look, I probably should have just walked everyone off site much earlier than that. And
so financially, what happened to you at that point?
So I started selling property to help keep the business afloat, and it was significant sums of money that sort of went down the gurgler. I'd sold everything down to sort of 2 properties. And then in July I think around sort of mid 2013, I put the construction business into liquidation.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And so that was pretty tough.
Wow.
That was pretty tough. But like the company, one of the companies that I was in dispute with ended up going under after that, and so they basically. I mean, if I think about like Arrow, Mainzeal, there's like a whole bunch of companies and they all went under.
Yeah.
And so it was, they were struggling financially, and then they just put all this pressure on our business and
contractors
my business,
feeling it everywhere.
And so, it was a pretty tough time, and sort of settled everything, avoided bankruptcy and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Got close.
And got close, but managed to because I'd signed all these personal guarantees, and so managed to sort of settle with creditors and then sort of move forward and got back into property really, really quickly and did some really good property deals.
So buying, touring up, flicking off, that sort of stuff?
Just wheeling and dealing, basically.
Right.
Did a land deal out in Drury and did a couple of reclads. From there, got some money to invest in BePure.
So that's an amazing. So you're probably you're in your 30s now.
Yeah. So I was I think I'd have been 30, 32.
So was there a distinctive end to property and start to BePure? Or did you finish, or was there a bit of a crossover?
So obviously there was a finish to the construction business. The maintenance business kept going in a sort of different form, but I kept doing that.
So you had an income.
So I had an income. It was. The income's only as good as the next deal that you do, so the next contract or anything. So it wasn't, but it allowed me to sort of, once I'd sort of dealt with the shutting down of the construction contracting business, it gave me some sort of time, and I'd kind of decided that I wanted to do something with some real purpose. And the construction industry, whilst I'm incredibly passionate about property and still are to this day, and really love the building industry, it's just so uncivilized, and I don't think it suits me. And so
you're saying you're civilized. Just joking.
I suppose I prefer things to be slightly more civilized.
Got it.
And like also like it's so scrappy, the construction industry. I mean, you've only got to look at the tallest apartment building in the city at the moment that's the site's shut down because they're in a legal dispute. It just happens constantly in the construction industry. Like, you're constantly scrapping over trying to get paid. Right. And so it's just stressful. It's hard.
So you've got some money.
And the margins are really slim.
You've got some money, you've made money out of property, and you said you're looking for somewhere to invest your money. You're actually out there?
So I was actively, and so it actually gave me I probably had a year and a half where I just sort of spent some just kind of reflecting on what I'd done, because like obviously property wheeling dealing wasn't a full-time thing. So I had quite a bit of spare time, and I had some success sort of wheeling and dealing property. But as I think we sort of chatted about last time we had breakfast, like one thing that I wanted to contribute to the economy, and I just, as we sort of touched on, like the way that the New Zealand economy is, it's sort of like a property market with a sort of small economy attached to it, and so I wanted to do something that was, trading property amongst each other isn't great for the long term sort of viability of our economy.
So I know what you mean. As I mentioned to you, when I came to New Zealand 25 years ago, I bought a business, but I would have been much better off buying a house, which doesn't seem right.
No,
if you're buying a business, you're employing people, you're adding to the community, you're adding to the economy, rather than buying a house.
Yeah.
So how did you at that stage find BePure? I mean, were you looking for something
So I was looking around at different things, and I was looking for something with some purpose. And the original founder of BePure, a guy called Ben, I'd actually met playing golf, and so.
When you were a kid?
Yeah, when I was a kid.
Right.
He was 10 years older than me, so I met him when I was 16 and he was sort of 25, 26 kind of thing. I knew that he was sort of I knew that he was doing this. I was a customer. I think I was one of the first customers of BePure.
Right.
And so I was buying the products myself and had been using them for years. But it wasn't until Ben used to do, prior to COVID, Ben used to do a lot of seminars around the country, and so I finally, sort of mid 2014, my girlfriend at the time and I went along to one of his seminars in Auckland, and I was like, it just really sort of struck a real interest in it, sort of. But it wasn't at that point. I wasn't like, hey, I want to invest or whatever. I just sort of I think the business, I saw a lot of potential in it, but it was a big do up, and the branding was like really awful at the time, but the message and everything was really, really powerful, and something that really sort of, I suppose, sparked an interest, and so I had a bit of time on my hands, so I just kind of offered to help him with a little bit of advice, and we had a couple of conversations, and he said that he wanted me more involved, and so one thing led to another, and then I managed to sort of complete the sale of a property project, and then I was able to put the proceeds of that into the business, and as a loan to start with, and then I converted that to equity at a later date. We pulled the business apart and relaunched it in July 2015, and like you said earlier, was very, very small business, doing about sort of $700,000 a year in revenue. So he was the original founder, and then we essentially relaunched it together.
So that's 2020 roughly?
Yeah.
And we're 2024 now, so 4 years.
Yeah.
What's happened there?
So in the last 4 years, I suppose a lot. Like the business is sort of has grown. I suppose both of our business, so our BePure and Eve business, have sort of really matured, and both businesses are sort of in a phase now where they're sort of poised for quite a bit of growth. We're just sort of, both in terms of the amount that we're expanding our distribution, both in New Zealand and overseas. And
so BePure, if you talk for BePure Wellness, you're a supplement. It's a leading supplement range.
Yeah.
There's so many. You go to Chemist Warehouse, and it's just got millions of different supplements. So what's different with your product?
Yeah, so there is sort of white spaces in competitive markets, and
just explain white space.
Sort of an opportunity where no one else is operating.
Okay.
And they can be quite subtle, and seem subtle to an outsider, but seem wide open to an insider, or like I probably refer to myself more as an inside outsider.
So you saw the white space you saw was what?
So and I suppose Ben introduced me to this white space. I would never have found it on my own. But the white space is basically creating supplement ranges and supplements that are backed by science, and although legally you can't say this, but at a therapeutic level. So having the ingredients at a level that is shown by the research to have a sort of meaningful benefit.
Do you do your own research, or who does that
No,
research?
so we utilise all the research that is going on around the world by our ingredient suppliers mainly. So our ingredient suppliers will do the research, and then we sort of take that and sort of combine multiple pieces of research together.
So the white space, I'm just trying to clarify.
So I suppose the white space is, so we've gone, as you sort of touched on at the start, our mission is to transform lives, and so our point of difference is we're selling a high quality product that is genuinely trying to help somebody,
right.
Which the majority of the supplement industry is in such a race to the bottom, where that it's so discount led. The sort of ingredients aren't at levels that can have a meaningful benefit to somebody's health, and so that's like basically the vast majority of the supplement industry is sort of largely products that have low levels of active ingredients and thus sort of pretty ineffective. So we've taken a high road and then tried to make that high road sort of mainstream, and so it's premium accessible.
So BePure Wellness and Eve Wellness. So you've got two supplement brands there.
Yeah.
What's the difference between each of those?
Yeah. So BePure's mission is to restore essential energy, and BePure is sort of a full spectrum supplement range. So we've got kids products right through to menopause products and everything in between, and is very much targeted. There's something in there for everyone. Essentially, whereas Eve Wellness is sort of very much targeted at sort of the Gen Z millennial age demographic, so a bit younger. It's absolutely female focused. It's female health issues. So the mission of Eve is to erase the shame around periods, sex hormones, and mental health, which you sort of touched on in the intro, and so it's a bit of an edgier brand. Its sort of tone of voice is very, very different, and again, it's operating in a white space in terms of we have the same product sort of philosophies that we do with BePure, but no one's talking to that age demographic in the way that we're talking to them about some of the health concerns that they have, and around those sort of key areas of health that I mentioned.
How are you reaching that? How are you reaching that demographic?
Social media. So obviously Instagram, TikTok, podcasts, advertising on the podcast networks. Events, so physical events, so supporting other people's events, having events of our own, essentially creating a community where that community can feel safe, I suppose, exploring some of these issues that demographic is dealing with, and a big part of what we do across both brands is education.
I'm just trying to work out, you've got, say, 30 odd people here in New Zealand, and you've got some people in Australia now.
Correct.
How long have you been over there?
So we launched our Eve brand into Australia earlier this year, and that's going really, really well. Our e-commerce business over the last couple of months is growing at over 100% a month, and that's sort of, the numbers are starting to get up pretty quickly, so
you've done that e-commerce wise first.
So we've done e-commerce first, and having said that, we've just got into a distributor who distributes to thousands and thousands of retailers across Australia with 8 different warehouses, etc.
Wow.
And then we're in specific conversations. We're in specific conversations with all of the leading retailers in Australia at the moment.
Where is the product made?
So we have globally, basically. Because of our formulations have a high level of complexity, the vast majority have been made in the US. Up until recently, we are doing more in New Zealand. We're doing more in Australia, but and as we keep expanding our global footprint, which is happening sort of at a faster rate at the moment. So we've really established the foundations and the internal financial resources to create significant scale in this business over the next few years. The pace in which we've moved in Australia has been really very, very quick, and then our plan is to roll the BePure business into Australia.
Can you keep up with demand? Have you got that?
Yeah, so that's actually quite a challenge, especially with some of our hero products. We do like keeping up with demand can be really challenging, but I suppose through COVID, where moving stuff around the world was very, very challenging, we, I suppose, really built some pretty good logistics skills in-house, and that's serving us really well now as we're sort of scaling more around the world.
So you don't have retail premises?
Only so our office, our head office is at Ponsonby Central, which you sort of saw this morning, and so people can come and buy our supplements from there. But we're not a retailer. Sort of as I sort of touched on earlier, our core business is designing and developing transformational health products, marketing those in a way that sort of meets people where they are, inspires them, educates them, and then distributing through an omni-channel distribution model. So e-commerce and bricks and mortar. What we refer to as the e-commerce and the retail distribution is our physical availability, and then our marketing is our mental availability, in terms of brand awareness and sort of mental awareness and we're, I suppose, just getting better and better and better at that at the moment.
If I was to say to you, what percentage of your business is the product itself, and what percentage of it is the branding and marketing?
Ooh. That's a good question. I think it's a combination of all of it. I don't think you can do one without the other, but I think, and I think within our BePure business is considerably bigger than Eve, but I think on the Eve side we've really nailed every part of that equation. We've got the community, we've got the tone of voice, we've got the look and feel, we've got the formulations right, and that sort of we've got the marketing strategy right, and so when you get the combination of all of that right, you start seeing some pretty cool growth,
and all that's done in house.
So we do everything. So we design all of the supplements ourselves. So we have a lead researcher internally that works across both brands. We've started outsourcing physical logistics in terms of we've moved. A couple of years ago, we moved to a 3PL instead of having our own warehouse. Again,
your branding and marketing is in-house as well?
All of it is in-house. Yeah,
that's not outsourced.
So everything's designed in-house. Yeah, we don't.
How many? And you're employing marketers. You're employing e-marketers.
Yeah.
Social media.
Yeah. All of that's content creators.
Everything.
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
We could probably talk for another couple of hours on that alone, but. It's pretty exciting. It sounds like your growth is really starting to happen, or it's happening.
Yeah. I mean, there's, I sort of probably can't go into too much details on numbers, but it's like we're going into sort of quite a big growth phase at the moment, and so it's really, really exciting. And as I mentioned, we're sort of defying the recession gravity, which has been really cool. And I think that's a sort of a testament to where we come from, and that like everything we do, our sort of North Star is creating products that can have a material sort of make a material impact on somebody's life. So that mission, that group mission to transform lives is very much our North Star for decision making. And
do your staff all know that? Is that
yeah?
How do you know they know that?
It's just integrated right into the business. It's everyone's passionate about making a difference, and I sort of refer to what sort of the way that the business works is sort of like a transformational flywheel, in the sense that we create these sort of transformational products. We market them in an education inspiring way. We get them in the hands of people that can receive, a growing number of people that can receive value from them. And then the testimonials we get back daily is just the fuel that keeps us going to doing it again. And so there's a really strong feel-good factor around putting something out there that can really, really help people, and then getting the testimonials flowing back in that and you know, on the daily we're getting testimonials that are just where we've powerfully had our products have powerfully had a material impact on somebody's life.
When you're employing someone, what are you looking for? Yeah,
this is a really, really good question. Because the absolute secret to business is having the right people in the right places, and it's sort of the really basic. And it's taken me a long time to learn who the right people are, and I think you've got to know where you're going to know who the right person is as well, and make sure you're making decisions from a place of, I suppose, first principles.
So when you're looking at someone, what are you looking for?
You're looking for like a great attitude first and foremost, like can do. Somebody with good energy, somebody who's honest and upfront, and then somebody with some really great skills. Like where I suppose, and fortunately the brands that we've got, we're able to attract some really good talent, and so, yeah, having sort of a group of people that's goal is, as I sort of say to people, the two things I do when I go into work every day is I try and create a platform for the company to fulfill on its potential, and allow that platform to help the individuals that make up the company fulfill on their potential. And so basically I want to hire somebody that wants to fulfill on their potential, and we'll give them the platform to do that. Platform
potential. Did you just make that up?
Not
now, but you've made this. Is this something you read somewhere, or you just?
No, it's just that's just the logic of what we're doing, I suppose.
It's awesome. It's an amazing story. It's really encouraging, like you said before. I mean, the last sort of 8-9 years have been incredibly tough for business internationally, and particularly in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And as you say, you've bucked the trend.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, like and we sort of chatted about this coming in, is like it's not all like the success isn't like this. It is more so at the moment. Like we have got a little bit of this going on at the moment, but and even when that's happening, it's still bloody hard work, and like I said before we sort of came in here, it's like I'm in the trenches, and it's sort of hard yakka, but through over those 9 years, like we've had some failures, man. Like we created a lab. We spent about $5 million on and setting up a testing business and all of that sort of thing that we ended up shutting down and sort of writing off the whole lot. And so it's we've definitely made some mistakes, but we've, as I said before, we've failed forward and I've learnt some hard lessons, like right across my business career, and it turns out, making decisions from a place of ego and sort of not enough is not that useful.
And it's funny, you said at 19, you had that stop, and then in your property business, and so you're comfortable. You've lived that, and it's happening. When it happens in your current business, it's as you said, fail forward. And I also love the don't stay within the lines, and the fact that you encourage people to do that, and you provide that platform as well. So I think we could keep going, but we're probably going to have to close it. But really, really appreciate it. Is there anything, anyone particularly who's we're actually. These people here have got a business. It's a new business. Anyone that sort of, we'll finish off with this, but if anyone is starting a business, what would you say?
Just lean in. Just keep leaning in. Like if you feel like you're avoiding something that needs to be done, you just got to lean in.
And when you say lean in, means what?
Lean in and do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the avoidance of whatever isn't being done that should be done creates far more suffering than turning a blind eye to it. So
So when you recognise you're procrastinating, that's when it's time.
You just got to lean in.
Love it.
Yeah, and it's fucking hard.
Perfect way to finish it. We'll finish it there, mate. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And hopefully it'd be nice to catch up with you maybe in a few years' time to see where you're next at.
Yeah, cool.
That'd be great.
Cool.
All right, Andrew. Thanks,
all right,
mate.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.